Okay, so welcome everyone to our first Product People Community Talk of the year. I'm very excited to be hosting this one. And we have a very special guest coming from Stripe to talk us about building human-in-the-loop AI products. And before we dive into that, I'm just going to do a little bit of an intro about myself and the company. So hi, I'm going to be your host today. My name is João. I'm an associate product manager, and I joined Product People last year around April. And I've been a product manager for about 1.5 years. And it's been a very exciting journey so far, with an opportunity to learn a lot about several industries, the music fintech, for example, and the mobility industries that I've worked in. And very excited to be here today with all of you. So thank you for joining. A little bit about our company. What is it that we do? So Product People focuses on discovering and delivering great products faster for our clients. And we do this in two fronts. So first, we do it through our community, where we encourage everyone there, also our product managers, to share knowledge generously. And we do it in such things like this community talk that we're seeing right now. And also we do what we like to call the unglamorous work of a product manager on an interim basis for our clients. So we basically focus on delivering value for these clients that we have. And we focus on onboarding fast, aligning teams, and delivering great outcomes. So we now want to get to know you more, and also the relationship you have with this topic in particular. So here are a few questions for you to answer. This should be relatively quick. I'm just going to read them through as well, because this is very new to me. So first, a human in the loop is where a human provides input to a machine learning system where its predictions are not as confident. Were you familiar with this concept prior to the session? Not really, I'm not. Okay, do you use AI to automate work of a human agent in your current company? No, I don't. So I guess these are a lot of no's. So I do seem to have a lot to learn. Let's see. Oops, sorry. Oh, sorry about that technical issue. Okay, does your company rely on human operations to scale its business? Okay, that's definitely something. Let me just answer here. Send. We may have our answers really soon. Let's see what the audience is going to answer as well. We may have our answers really soon. Very curious about this topic because I'm not very familiar with AI at all. Okay, so for our answers, we see 75% answered no for the first question, 75% also no for the second question, and 50-50 for the last one. Okay, it seems like it's going to be a very insightful session. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce you to Sahar, a product manager who's joining us from Stripe. And thank you so much for being here today and for accepting our invitation. And looking forward to see what you have to share with us today. I'm sure it's going to be amazing.
Yes, great being here. Should I go ahead and start?
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing my screen then, so you can take it.
Great.
And the stage is all yours.
Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can. All good.
Great. So thanks for having me for the kind intro, John, and excited to be here today. And hey, everyone else, and great to meet you all. My name is Sahar. I'm a product manager at Stripe, where I lead our strategic data partnerships. Before joining Stripe, I had my own venture, which was a document intelligence API called AirPaper, which is kind of similar to Google Document AI and AWS Tesseract. And prior to that, I was an early operator in a couple of AI ventures, as a product manager and an engineering manager. And today we're going to explore best practices for PMs building products with AI in their core. It involves some part of a human element in the loop, also known as human in the loop. And before we start, let's define what is human in the loop. So human in the loop is a branch of AI that combines humans and machine intelligence to create machine learning models through a process where humans train, tune, and test a particular algorithm. We can start with the one example we all know, posting on Facebook. So Facebook wants to make sure that there is no harmful content on its platform, bullying, discriminative, or any misinformation posts. And as such, they employ, or to do so, they kind of have a process behind the scenes that combines both automated models and humans. So as you can see, the first step would be to determine if the submitted post is harmful. followed by the second step, which is if the post is classified as harmful, is determining what kind of harmful text it is. Is it bullying, toxic, misinformation? And each type would require a different type of human specialization to classify. Then there are several of other steps that eventually lead to either approving or blocking the post on Facebook. And we can think about each one of these steps as a task that should be 100% automated. For example, a harmful text classifier for the first step with the human agent as a fallback when the machine is not confident enough. And to prevent harmful posts at a scale such as Facebook's scale, companies like Meta have tens of thousands of humans covering for their ML models when they're not able to provide a definitive result. And this is a report from 2018 or so that shows that Meta has around 15,000 content reviewers on the platform. Another recent example we all know and familiar with is ChatGPT, where OpenAI used human labelers to better align ChatGPT with what OpenAI deems as the desired behavior, such as avoiding toxicity and wrong facts. And the last example that might come as a bit of a surprise is Google Search and how its ranking algorithm is being trained with humans. And for that, let's watch a short clip. And let me know if you can.
Those people that we ask the question of which is better, A or B, are known as search quality raters.
The people at Google aren't deciding what's a good result from a bad result. The people at Google aren't determining what results to show for any given query, but rather the raters are basically teaching our computers what's good and what's bad. Is this a high quality result? Is this a low quality result?
And they are trained on what are called our rater guidelines.
The Search Quality Evaluator Guidelines are a 168-page document establishing what makes a good search result good. We're talking about websites exhibiting expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. These words are given clear, detailed definitions so that thousands of independent evaluators keeping an eye on search know what they're looking for. Want your website to show up higher in search? Read the guidelines. Seriously, they're publicly available, and the more people that read them, the better the web could be for everybody.
So in this example, a task could be determining if a website is authority, promotes spam, or violates any other guidelines. And each one of those guidelines can be a task a machine would try to solve first automatically and have the human rater as a fallback. So beyond Meta, OpenAI, and Google, many other products we heavily use today have an automated element that is being backed by humans. For such products, it's essential for us as product managers to understand how to think and scale the human operation side of their underlying workflows. And so far, we can define what are human-in-the-loop products with several examples. Next, we will explore key metrics for human-in-the-loop products and PMs, how to scale from a human-heavy workflow into an automated one. I will then share a prioritization framework, and lastly, a few examples of useful tools for AI PMs. So the three key metrics of human-in-the-loop products that will define how we kind of build, scale, and think about our products are cost, accuracy, and turnaround time, which I will refer to throughout the talk. So starting with cost, what is cost? So cost is the dollar amount we spend to support our product experience. It is calculated by the cost per task, multiplied by the number of tasks. For example, let's assume Facebook has 1 million posts per month that need to be reviewed for harmful content, and each review costs around 30 cents on average. This will result in around $300,000 a month as the cost of supporting this workflow. The cost of a task, which is the 30 cents I mentioned earlier, will be determined by the level of expertise needed for the task at hand. For example, classifying a harmful post for bullying using psychologists versus trained students. Next, we will need to ensure the human and machine output is correct. In our Facebook example, this means we have correctly classified a post as non-harmful or harmful, which is a metric known as the false positive rate. In an example of where a human and machine output correctly classified a post as harmful, 9 out of every 10 cases, our accuracy rate would be around 90%. But not all mistakes within the remaining 10% are equal. You should review the mistakes in this 10% population and ask yourselves, what are customer expectations? Are those trust-defying mistakes or ones the customers would naturally expect? What are realistic expectations, even from a human expert? And eventually, what is the impact for a specific bucket of mistakes? For example, A harmful post coming from an influencer with millions of followers would have a higher impact than a user with no followers. A common pitfall for AI PMs, also from experience, when it comes to accuracy, is to aim for 100% accuracy, which usually leads to unnecessary rabbit hole of optimizations. Instead, you want to set a golden accuracy rate as a benchmark for determining what is the accuracy rate of an independent human expert in this field. For example, the golden accuracy rate of a certified board radiologist is 97%, which is what you want to have as a benchmark against and iterate towards as your accuracy rate. Anything below 97% would mean you are not on par with the human level performance, and everything beyond 97% accuracy mean you are exceeding your customer expectations. And lastly, turnaround time is how long it takes until the task has been completed. Turnaround time has two components: time in queue and execution time. Time in queue is the time that passes from the moment the task is actionable until it's being worked on by a human agent. For example, from the moment a user clicked publish on a new post. And execution time is more about how much time it takes for a human agent to complete the task once started. For example, 10 seconds to actually determine if it's harmful or not. Tasks will vary in their turnaround time requirements based on the desired customer experience or product offering. For example, the required turnaround time for a stroke classifier would be in the ballpark of seconds, which is different from a harmful post screening product, for which the turnaround time can be in the ballpark of minutes. Thing is, improving one metric usually comes at the expense of another. And more often than not, you will have to make trade-offs as PMs as for what to optimize at any given point in time. For example, you can add more human agents to solve tasks faster, thus reducing turnaround time. But this will lead to an increase in costs, and you will pay more agents. You will put more weight on each metric based on the product you're building and in the face of your company. For example, maintaining high accuracy is more important early on in the cancer classification product compared to a harmful post detection in a social network product. And the phase of your company will also mainly affect your cost appetite. For example, in one of my previous ventures, we want to prioritize user growth, even at the expense of increasing costs by employing more agents. We therefore focus on increasing accuracy and reducing turnaround time to increase our net promoter score. So we spent more money having more agents to solve more tasks faster and more qualified agents to increase accuracy, but this came at the expense of increasing costs. So now that we know and understand which metrics we should account for, let's explore ways to improve them. So usually as an AI PM, you will go through some sort of a journey as the one illustrated in this graph, starting with a full agency model where all tasks are being solved by humans. Usually in these cases, accuracy tends to be the highest at the expense of higher cost and turnaround time. Then, as you will gradually collect more data and become an expert in the domain as a product manager, you automate by seeing all the edge cases, and you will start building automation into your human-heavy workflows. You must probably start with rule-based logic before wrongly and prematurely building proprietary ML models internally. At this point, you have a machine-human hybrid model where the load is being divided between machines and humans. And you will then gradually move from the MHH side of the house to into like a full automation setup as you select the most frequent tasks and automate them. But the question is, how do we build a roadmap that will take us along the dashed line all the way from an agency model to full automation? So for that, we would need to build a roadmap of improvements, which would start with mapping your workflow. Here, we can see the same harmful post workflow from earlier. And after mapping your workflow, you will need to break it down to smaller tasks and prioritize based on cost, turnaround time, and accuracy. At this point, you should have a view of all the tasks in your workflow and how they perform across those metrics. With this, you can prioritize according to your company objective, as mentioned earlier. If reducing cost is your current objective, then you would probably want to prioritize addressing the cost-heavy tasks and not the accuracy-heavy tasks. And this is another example of a prioritization metrics from one of my previous ventures, where we automated bookkeeping for small and medium business owners. Back then, a portion of our customers' monthly VAT declarations were not submitted on time to the tax authorities. We therefore set an objective to reduce the turnaround time for the VAT submission workflow. Together with my Eng and data science counterparts, which is something you would also do as a PMs on your end, we mapped all the tasks that are part of the VAT declaration workflow and filled the relevant cost, accuracy, and turnaround metrics. And as an example, extracting information from invoices, such as their amount, took around 25 seconds per invoice, yet had an average turnaround time of 22 hours, and it was stuck in the queue before hitting an operation agents. It was also a common task, which is why it collectively took around 12% of our overall operations time. Now, having this breakdown, it really informed our prioritization and roadmap and helped us understand where we would like to focus our next few months. And to be able to assign these metrics and create such a sheet, we had to build the tracking in place from day one. So tracking will help you in drafting your roadmap, as I mentioned earlier, and prioritize across these three metrics. It will also be your bedrock for your discussions with other stakeholders and leadership to make sure that you have informed decisions as for what to focus on. For example, in one of my previous ventures, leadership will sometimes be concerned about the accuracy rate of some tasks. By showing them that the accuracy rate is actually almost on par with the golden accuracy rate, we have managed to foster confidence in our original roadmap and make sure that we're running in the right direction. Specifically, you would want to track from day one the duration from the moment a task was created until it was completed, also known as turnaround time. What is the execution time for solving a task, such as classifying one post, also known as cost, and how many times your human plus machine combo made the wrong decision, also known as accuracy. This tracking will clearly surface the tasks with the highest turnaround time, highest cost, and lowest accuracy. And this is another example from the accounting automation startup I mentioned earlier, where we mapped how much time our operations team spends on each task. According to this graph, it's clear that 27% of our time was spent on extracting information from documents, and another 19% on filing the monthly VAT declaration. So this graph specifically focuses on execution time and cost. So by now, you should have a roadmap of tasks you would like to focus on. What's next? What are ways I found useful for improving cost, accuracy, and turnaround time? So starting with cost, facilitation is one method of getting there. Facilitation is the process of simplifying a task so a less skilled agent is able to complete it. For example, for a cancer classification task, being able to employ a medical student over a board-certified radiologist would mean the cost per task will reduce, as students basically have a lower hourly rate. How do you get there? You can improve the agent training to include more information that will bridge the information gaps from the more expensive expert. Lastly, by making the task simpler, you bring it one step closer for being solvable by a machine, which will reduce the cost from agent costs to server costs, and there will be no humans involved. Now, beyond facilitation, another common way of reducing cost is by reducing the time it takes an agent to complete the task by adding shortcuts to your human-in-the-loop interface and providing pre-filled machine-generated suggestions for human agents to review and confirm. So again, the example from earlier about extracting information from invoices, you can already pre-fill some of the fields if you have not the highest confidence, but some confidence, so an agent will just confirm before moving forward to the next task. When it comes to improving accuracy, there are a few mechanisms you can employ. The first one is a consensus mechanism in which a task will be solved by more than one agent. And in case two agents made a different decision, as let's say one said it's not harmful and the other one said it is harmful, you can ask a third agent to break the tie. And safety net is another great way to ensure mistakes are being caught before hitting production. For example, taking the automated bookkeeping venture, we had a rule that resurfaced invoices having the amount that is 20x the average invoice amount for a given business, as this is probably unusual. In such cases, the task will be shown to another human agent to boost accuracy. Beyond these safety nets, trap tasks are a great way to keep your agents alert and the bar high on an ongoing basis, especially as you scale to hundreds and thousands of customers. Trap tasks are tasks that are already labeled and solved and are used to detect agents having accuracy issues. So in our bookkeeping example, we will have a set of solved and validated tasks as the ground truth, which will then feed into agent queues on a randomized basis to see if they resolved it in the same way. Wrongly solved tasks will trigger a retraining of the agent, or basically improving the underlying training itself, because it basically implies that something here is missing and agents are still making mistakes. The thing is about accuracy is that it constantly evolves as you scale with customers and deal with more diverse data, such as languages or different types of customers. And as discussed earlier, one way to maintain high accuracy is by tracking the least accurate tasks and address them as a part of your prioritization. Beyond that, you can use your customers and human-in-the-loop agents to capture accuracy issues. For example, in one of my previous ventures, we tracked data quality issues by recording any corrections or edits agents made in our labeling interface. We also had a dedicated data quality agent team that will randomly review completed tasks and capture mistakes in a dedicated sheet. Then, as a PM, I will go and review and see if there are any insights to mine. Another example of capturing customer feedback can be found on Facebook and OpenAI's DALL-E, for example. We can see here the OpenAI DALL-E kind of text box when you click on report and issue. And I think it's fair to assume there is a PM reviewing these cases and funneling this feedback into both the underlying machine learning model to make sure it improves, but also potentially the human-in-the-loop team that allowed this generation to go through in the first place. Next, talking about turnaround time. So how do we improve turnaround time? It's actually a bit more straightforward. You can either reduce the time a task spends in the queue by hiring more human operations, or by automating the tasks altogether, and then it doesn't spend any time waiting for anyone. And second, you can reduce the time it takes to complete a task. For example, as I mentioned earlier, improving the operations interface, adding shortcuts, having machine-generated recommendation that only require a confirmation, a click, etc. But as you optimize across these metrics, what is the end game? So the end game will be to have only server costs, so no humans in the loop. Like this is the end game, although it's very hard to get there, but having only server costs. The second one will be to have your accuracy being fully managed and driven by tracked performance metrics, such as precision, and turnaround time being close to zero, given there will always be some round trips to some server. So before we finish, another note about human operations, given its importance in human-in-the-loop products. Many times I see many teams kind of struggle between should they hire their internal in-house operations team or outsource it altogether. So for this question, there are a few guiding questions that will help you make this decision. The first one is everything around privacy and regulations. Are there any constraints that will prevent you from outsourcing the task to a third-party provider? For example, in the healthcare space, or also here at Stripe, when it comes to fintech and payments, there is always regulation involved. So you cannot actually outsource everything to an external agent. Sometimes there is also intellectual property concerns where you don't want to outsource or give away too much of the secret sauce by showing external teams how you operate. And lastly, there also sometimes requires expertise. It is really hard to come by, and that's therefore requires specialized in-house training and therefore an in-house team to work with. An internal operations team will be easier to adjust, especially as you scale your product, but hiring and cost will become a blocker at some point. And that's why there is also a middle ground where you can outsource the easy yet frequent parts of your workload to make sure that you are able to scale while keeping the tough parts internally and iterating with the operations team. The second part about human operations is the ability to hire and train new agents as you scale with your customer base. Imagine you would need to hire 100 new agents a month. I mean, let's take Facebook as an example. They probably need to hire hundreds of new agents a month to support their growth base. In such case, you would need to make sure that your agents onboarding process is scalable. You can't just go there and like run training one by one. And previously, I've used WalkMe to build a self-serve onboarding experience to train new agents, and therefore removing the need of doing it ourselves. And leaving you with a few examples of useful tools for IPMs. So on the labeling front, you may need to make a decision either building it yourself internally or using some outsourced commercial products. There you have solutions such as Labelbox or Datasaur, or even open source ones like Table Studio. And I think Snorkel used to be, I think they still have an open source version. And you can also outsource your entire human operations with solutions such as Cloud Factory and Scale AI. So having someone outside of your company to solve tasks for you. And lastly, when it comes to automation, I think it's very tempting to always build your proprietary models. And you will do so probably at some point, because this is going to be part of your moat as a company, as a product manager. But in many cases, you can use cloud providers' APIs, such as Tesseract for document extraction, or Google Natural Language AI for anything NLP, or even Hugging Face, which is also a great alternative to spin off machine learning pipelines in minutes. All of these solutions are great. There are also, of course, like OpenAI and GPT and the like. Especially as we're in a world where people want to build their own models, but in many cases, you can use something already built in out of the box before you get to the point where you actually have enough data and proprietary knowledge to build your own models. And with that, I will open the stage to any questions. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and let me know. Feel free to connect on either LinkedIn or Twitter.
Thank you so much. That was a very nice presentation. If you mind, I'll probably share my screen again, because we'll have a Q&A section dedicated to that as well. So let's go at it. Okay. Yeah, so we're about to enter our Q&A, but before that, I'm going to share a few more things about product people, but that gives people time to formulate their questions. So if you're on Zoom, please feel free to raise your hand or add the questions in the chat, as well as for the other platforms, feel free to comment those, and we'll be sure to take those after and make sure to see what we have. I'm sure it's going to be insightful. So sharing a bit more about product people. So here are some use cases when it makes sense for you to engage with us. So in case your company is looking for an interim product manager, in case someone in your team is going on a parental leave, or you need someone while you're still hiring an FTE. Also, if you need someone on the coaching, consultancy, or discovery front, if you need someone to coach your product team, also streamline processes, or maybe discover and run your next impactful initiative, we make sure to cover for that and provide services on that front to all of our clients. Also, as an interim product management agency, we have a very defined, delimited scope, and it's also good to highlight the things that we do not do. As a consequence, for example, we're not recruiters, so we don't source candidates, but we're happy that you use our community to share your role. Also, we're not a freelance marketplace, and our entire team are composed of FTEs. So if you really want to reach out to a freelance marketplace, we have a partner to recommend to you. And the same thing happens in case you're looking for a development or a design agency. We're happy to introduce you to some reliable firms we've worked with, since we're also just focused on product management. We also like to showcase very much the clients that we love to work with, also in the B2C front, like FreeNow, Backmarket, Zalando, and on the B2B as well, like the WHO, Cognigy, Utopia, and etc. Also good to see the positive feedback from our clients, and to be able not only to deliver for our mission of discovering and deliver great products faster, but also be able to deliver for their mission and their vision to make their vision come true, in a sense, through the work that we do. And that's very rewarding in every sense of the word. And some very interesting stats about our team is that we've managed to support more than 120 cross-functional teams. Also, we're composed of essentially 40 product people, let's say, we call it onigiris, both composed of product managers and product leaders from which 61% are women and 66%, so 2/3 are women in leadership, and things are going very well at this point. As you can also see, our team is very diverse. We are located literally almost everywhere in multiple continents. And yeah, we're essentially registered in Berlin. And of course, we're always looking to acquire and always on the lookout for new talent. And we have some positions open as well. In this case, we have a business development representative position, also a growth and partnerships manager and junior account executive roles. So if you know someone or if you would like to apply, please feel free to do so by using this link, and we're going to share it on our main platforms. And yeah, we're going to be expecting your application in that case. So I guess we're good to go for our Q&A. Let's see what questions we have. Okay, so I'm just going to quote here some questions we're getting from multiple platforms. So one question we're getting about data quality. So I'm just going to quote, can you please explain the data quality part? What exactly you are doing to monitor data quality here? I'm not sure if you have some insights on that.
Yeah, so data quality, I mean, there are a few mechanisms I mentioned earlier. So the first one is having a data quality team. So this is not necessarily as scalable. The idea is that you will have a few people assigned to reviewing tasks. You can decide what kind of tasks you want to review. Maybe you want to review every document that have like a high importance. Using again the fintech example, because I think, or let's take even Stripe as an example. Probably want to review payments that are above a specific threshold, because having a mistake there will be a lot more meaningful. And what does it mean to review? If you need to make a decision about, let's say, fraud or not fraud, then in such a case, you will have like a queue of payments where a human agent will review and check for if it's actually fraudulent or not. And by doing so, we'll then funnel this feedback back to the human team or like the machine learning model. And so data quality in a way is kind of the ability to understand, to make sure that the labels that you are generating are on par and actually accurate. The first part is like employing a team of data quality agents or reviewers. Those ones are usually like the best within your labeling team, and they have the most proficiency and understand all the nuances of whatever underlying task you're having. The second way is to employ different automated kind of safety nets when it comes to data quality. For example, there might be some anomalies that don't make a lot of sense. Let's take maybe again like the accounting example. If you see an invoice from Germany that is written in German, and 99% of German invoices have VAT in the invoice, and still VAT was not extracted, then this might be a special case where you want to have another pair of eyes and look and check. And lastly, I think another way to maintain data quality is to make sure that your human team, like human agents, are always kind of on par and trained with all the different edge cases. And given that your product, again, like constantly evolve, and there are different things you find out as you see more data in production. Yeah. And lastly, there's the example earlier I mentioned about the 20x invoice. Again, like trying to think about what are anomalies within your data and making sure those are not hitting production or any customers.
All right, thank you. Thanks for answering that one. So we also have another one here on Zoom. So it commented, I wonder if any of the AI programs shared at the end could also work for HR purposes.
Yeah, so I probably would need to define what is HR process. You know, do you have any, Laura, do you maybe have a few more context you could share about that?
Yes, yeah, I will just talk because it will be faster than texting. Yeah, I wonder, like, to process, for example, applications or yeah, some other HR tasks, but mostly applications. This is maybe not exactly what we were being talking, but I perhaps you know these problems well, and you know that we can use them for such purposes.
Yeah, so and the question is about any automated ways to review, like for HR processes, specifically, let's say reviewing applications. I think there are many tools out there today that sometimes have it built into their into the product. I know of ones like Fountain, and I think a couple of other ones. That said, you can definitely build, if this is something that you will find useful, you can build your own interface to kind of review applications. The question is, what is the goal? Is the goal to build a classifier that will decide if given an application should be moved on to the next stage or not, specifically to your use case, to your company preferences? Otherwise, we'll probably recommend using other tools to do so automatically. And usually those are the HR tools. So if you're using some HR software, I would recommend checking if they already have something like this in place for that.
All right. Thanks for the question. Thanks for engaging as well. Appreciate that. Okay, we have another one. So I think it's coming from LinkedIn. So would like to hear more about how decisions are made on accuracy for prioritization. If you use consensus, safety nets, trap tasks, how to think about investigation using these for prioritization.
So the question is how to use safety net trap tasks for prioritization, or
yeah, and I think about these particular cases, like if you use consensus, safety nets, trap tasks, like how do you think about investigation and using these for prioritization?
So making sure I got the question right. I think there are two questions here. The first one is how do you prioritize
how do you make
tasks?
Yeah, make decisions on accuracy for prioritization.
Yeah. So eventually the way to think about accuracy is, so trap tasks, I'm putting completely aside because they shouldn't really affect accuracy eventually. So accuracy, you should think about that from the customer perspective. So what eventually hits the customer, this is usually what will define as accuracy. If you have multiple ways internally to boost accuracy, that's completely fine. If you want, you can always break it down even further and have each one of those kind of models. If you have like a machine learning model that does anything, or an agent, you can usually want to have like accuracy rates broken down to each one of those components. But eventually accuracy is being determined by what is being shown to the, let's say, end customer, or what hits production again. So it's kind of put aside trap tasks and consensus mechanisms, because if both of us made a decision and it's not the same, but eventually we ended up making the right decision by having a third tiebreaker agent, then accuracy is still on track. And then the other question, how do you use prioritization? How do we prioritize? I hope I am getting this right. If it's about prioritizing tasks, which tasks to be assigned, you probably want to have a healthy mixture of like making sure that you are delivering on your operational workflows. And for example, getting the VAT submission on time, or labeling fraudulent payments on time, for example, at Stripe. But at the same time, you also want to make sure that you're leaving some subset of tasks as these trap tasks or consensus mechanisms. So we probably want to balance. I would assume usually what I've seen like in the past is that 1% of tasks being trap tasks, kind of smoothing around like throughout time, not all at once. Usually a good way to make sure agents are still on track and not kind of lose sight of the training.
Thanks for the reply. I hope that clarified. Feel free also to write more in the comment section in case something needs clarification. Okay, a question on my side is the way you measure the impact of such products limited to those three metrics you shared, right? The turnaround time and the cost and the accuracy. Is it limited to that? Is there something more?
So what is impact? I think it depends. I mean, there are some product managers that what they do is more like the platform kind of PMs. For example, they will build the everything around document intelligence, right? They extract all the information from documents. That's their goal as PMs, to make sure that every team that is reaching out to them with a document, they can return a structured JSON or some sort of a structured information back. And for those teams, those three metrics are usually the best ones to go against. That said, eventually, like any platform PM, you have a customer at the end, right? So you always want to ask yourself, what is the impact? I mean, for example, you might have very high accuracy, but 1% of the cases are very impactful for the end customer. So in these cases, you always want to work with the kind of PMs, other PMs on the team that rely on your services and those three metrics to deliver the end experience. Taking in Facebook as an example, you're automating the harmful workflow, but eventually there is probably some newsfeed PM that should use your output and make sure that the newsfeed operates and kind of hits their targets and OKRs on their end. To kind of summarize, those are three main metrics, especially for platform PMs, but they always serve end customer, and in that case, you have to work with the other PMs on your team to make sure it's actually the case.
Fantastic. And by the way, like, I'm not really sure, but are there any ethical implications from this sort of, for these sort of products, these sort of systems with humans in the loop? Are there any things on that front that we should consider? Or like even in your work as a PM, like how do you determine those user needs and have these ethical considerations in mind if needed, right?
Yeah, I'm actually, on this case, I think one interesting example that comes to mind is with OpenAI in one of their recent papers when they explained how they trained ChatGPT, I think it was. They talked about the fact that the kind of humans you bring on board to train your, to basically label your data and also provide the operational workflow is in a way skewed. So you can think about it in two ways. The first one is a PM, someone is going to define what is right and what is wrong, what is correct and what is not correct, right? So in the way you think about that, this one person or entity defining what is correct and what's not can be sometimes biased and skewed and anyway defined by one person. So this is one area. And the second area, the labeler or the agents themselves have their own kind of point of views, like worldviews, biases, preferences. So you want to make sure that you're not over-indexing to some direction as you kind of put your own thinking and preferences into the label data and product.
All right, that's very good. Thanks. I think we also have another question on Zoom, which is, let me read. Do you have experience using machine learning or similar tools to predict future team or product delivery behavior?
I haven't done it in the past. So I feel like also behavior, what does behavior mean? Is it about predicting what to work on next? Is it about predicting velocity or underperforming team members? I think it's definitely possible. Yeah. Do you have any insight there?
There's also some input here, like the machine learning would be informed by past work data, such as tasks, epics, or user stories. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
And also like behavior equals, for example, how long will the team need for a task of type X?
Yeah, interesting question. I think that eventually it's more of a pure ML kind of question. If you can break it down to discrete features, maybe you can predict it and kind of know how much time it will take to conduct a task. I would assume it's a bit more challenging given there are so many variants like team members and like who is doing the task, how big is the task, a lot of uncertainties. So maybe Jira will release such a feature at some point in the future.
That certainly would be useful. So another question.
We're basically trying to do that. We're basically trying to do that with story points, right? In sprint plannings. We're manually building a mapping between like a task and how much time it should take. So I mean, as far as I remember, like this is basically what we're doing with sprint plannings and story points.
I mean, that's very true. Definitely something that could be explored. And so is the vision always aiming at becoming reliable just on the model itself, like not having these humans in the loop anymore? Like, is that where things tend to go towards, or how's your experience with it, or projecting the vision of a certain product or company?
Yeah, it's a very good question. That's the goal, but at the same time, I don't think aiming for 100% automation is healthy. So in a world where every task is being done by a machine, that means that the machine knows how to account for, as I mentioned earlier, any new data it hasn't seen before, and like a new language, new business models, and the like. It also means that you will have to automate each and every one of the long tail tasks, which as, let's say, a startup or a business, not always the right thing to do. So I do think that you need to kind of define what is your long tail of tasks. What are things that you're not going to address in the next, I don't know, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then kind of ignore those cases and by default assigning them to humans while you focus all of your efforts on the more prominent part of your human in the loop workflow load.
And in your personal experience, is there any like best practices you'd like to share, like any advice personally, like working in this industry?
Yeah, so I can start specifically with the last question you just asked. For example, if you see cases where even there is no like real tools or tools in the industry to solve them, for example, handwritten notes were always a challenge for OCR. So if you're now building like a document intelligence product and you have handwritten notes, I wouldn't recommend focusing on that from day one, unless they represent the majority of your like tasks and data set. So kind of thinking about what is out there and using this as a benchmark to what you should be capable of achieving, will help you better determining what tasks you want to address and which ones you want to probably keep for a later time. Other best practices, I mentioned it in the talk, but I will kind of underscore it again. Many times people are very much excited about building their own proprietary models. The more time passes, the more it's clear that there are many, many great off-the-shelf products out there that PMs can use for the very least to prototype. And then if it's part of your core IP as a startup or a company, yes, I do think you'll need to build a proprietary model. Otherwise, you won't be defensible, like the many other ChatGPT applications we see out there. But using outside and off-the-shelf models can get you quite far, especially if you want to prototype, and especially if you want to get something off the ground.
Amazing. Sounds very good. Maybe one last question. Do you have any resources, books for a basic understanding of AI as a PM, like anything you'd like to recommend?
Yeah, okay, I can post it here, but there is one book I actually don't think many people know. It's called Machine Learning Yearning, as in YEARING, which is quite insightful. It was written by Andrew Ng from the famous machine learning course on Coursera, and I think it is one of the only books where he actually explores the intersection between product management, project management, and data science. So kind of saying the name again, called Machine Learning Yearning, and I'm not sure how you can find it, but I'm pretty sure some Google search will find it.
Yeah, for sure. And feel free to type it down in our chat.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't seem to have any more questions, but again, Sahar, thank you so much for your contribution and for sharing knowledge generously with us with this amazing topic. It was very, very good. And for everyone else, thank you so much for joining our talk today. And feel free to follow us on our platforms, on Meetup, Telegram, and also support us on Patreon if you can. And thank you so much. We foresee many good talks this year, so stick around and see you until the next one. Thank you so much, and until next time.
Thanks for having me, guys.